name is Jeni Baker. I'm a quilter and a fabric designer for Art Gallery Fabrics. And today I'm going to show you one of the fundamental building blocks of many quilt patterns. It's called the half square triangle. And what a half square triangle is, it's a square that is split in half by two triangles. So it may look complicated, but it really is very, very easy. So what we're going to be making today is this half square triangle pillow, and it's made with all half square triangles. They're just turned in different directions to give us this kind of diamond design. So a couple other projects that I have here that are made with half square triangles. This little mini quilt is made all with half square triangles too. Here is a little grocery bag dispenser that has a print on one half of the half square triangle and a solid on the other. So there's a lot of things you can do to mix it up and get a different look. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you two ways to make half square triangles. One is considered more traditional and the other is considered a little more of an alternative technique. So I'm going to start with two 4-inch squares, and I'm going to put those right sides together. And I'm going to draw a line diagonally from corner to corner on the wrong side of my block. You could use a marking pen, a dull pencil, whatever you have handy. So once I've got that marked, I'm going to bring it over to my machine, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side. So I'm going to get that lined up. So I'm just sewing a nice 1/4 inch seam on either side of that line. And having that 1/4 inch foot in this case makes it nice and easy. So I've got one side and I'm going to do the other. I'm going to go all the way to the end and then pull it out. So we've got our two seams. And now what we want to do is we want to cut these apart, because 2 squares is going to give us 2 half square triangles. So I'm lining up right on that line that I drew, and I'm just going to cut right across. And now we've got our 2 half square triangles. So we want to give these a nice press. I've got some here that are already pressed. And now what we want to do, we want our half square triangle blocks to be 3.5 inches unfinished. So we are going to trim those down, and we trim those down for 2 reasons. One reason is we want it to be the right size, and we want to square it up and make sure that it is nice and accurate. So you'll notice I'm lining up my 45-degree angle line on my ruler right on top of my diagonal seam, and I'm going a little bit over 3.5 because I want to be able to trim on all 4 sides so that it'll be nice and accurate. So it gives you a little bit of room for error. If your seams aren't quite right, that's perfectly fine because you're going to trim it all away during this step. So we've trimmed both sides, and now we have a nice clean half square triangle that measures exactly 3.5 inches. So that is our more traditional technique for making half square triangles. And now I'm going to show you a second way, and this technique uses a little bit of a bigger square, but we make 4 at a time. So it's a little bit of a time saver if you're making enough for a whole quilt. So I'm going to put my squares right sides together, and this time instead of marking a line, I'm going to go ahead and take this right over to the sewing machine, and I'm actually going to sew around all 4 sides. I'm going to sew this up. And this is going to seem a little bit weird because, oops, going a little bit fast. It's going to seem a little bit weird because it's kind of completely different from the traditional way of making half square triangles, but it's just so quick, and depending on what kind of fabric you have, being able to cut a larger square might save you from needing to buy more fabric. So I'm going to cross that stitching line. Okay, so I'm going to clip my thread, and now I want to cut this apart so that I can get to my 4 half square triangles. I'm going to use a little bit of a bigger ruler because I need to get across the diagonal, and I am just going to line this up right on the corners of my stitching and cut all the way across. Before I move it, I need to cut across the other diagonal. So I'm going to come around a little bit. Oh, that didn't quite cut. Always check it before you move the ruler because sometimes you don't get a very good, there we go, grip on it. So now we have our 4 half square triangles. And so we want to press all those seams open. So we've got 4 here ready to go. And we're going to do the same thing. These end up a little bit bigger than our first ones, but we're still going to trim them down to 3.5. So you can try both methods and pick one that you feel the most comfortable with. They both give you the same thing. The only thing with the larger squares, you do end up cutting on the bias, so just be careful not to stretch your fabrics out. So once we have all our half square triangles, we're going to piece them into 5 rows of 5 squares each, and you can certainly play around with the orientation of your blocks to get a different design. So just figure something out that you like and go ahead and piece that together. And I have pressed my row seams in one direction, alternating that direction every other row so that I get these really nice nestling seams. Just helps keep everything lined up, and it makes it really easy to get your points not cut off. So then I'll press all the rest of my seams open, and I'm ready to start putting together my pillow. So when I'm putting together my pillow top, I want to get some muslin or some white fabric to use for the inside because you're not going to see that. Then I've used a layer of needled cotton batting, and then I'm going to layer my pillow top on top of that. So I have one that I already quilted. So I chose to just quilt some shadow quilting, 1/4 inch on either side of these diamond seams. And so that just kind of accentuates the pattern that I was trying to create with my half square triangles. So once I have that quilted, I've cut away my excess binding and batting, and I'm ready to turn it into a pillow. So we're going to use just a simple envelope style pillow closure on this pillow. And the way that I like to do that, rather than have a piece of fabric that I'm going to turn down and hem, I like to go ahead and cut a piece that is twice as big as I need it, and then I can just fold it in half and stitch it closed at the fold. It just gives it a little bit more stability, and it's not quite as thin on the back. So I'm just going to layer those for my pillow. I'm going to line up raw edges with the raw edge of my pillow top. And then I'll layer this one on top of that. And so you'll see we get a little bit of overlap here, and that's what gives us that closure. So we'll go ahead and pin that all together. And you could certainly, once you do your sewing, you could serge the inside, you could zigzag stitch it, or if you're like me, you could just leave it. Unless you're gonna wash it, you're really not gonna need to do anything to finish those edges. So we're going to stitch around all 4 sides with our 1/4 inch seam, and then we're going to trim our corners and poke them out. So I'm gonna show you how I did that on this other pillow. So I've already got a 4-minute. I'm gonna pull that out real quick, just so that you can see what it looks like on the inside. Super simple, and I have actually zigzag stitched my edges on this one. It's certainly not necessary, but I knew that I was gonna wash this one, so I did go ahead and finish those edges. So it is pretty clean. It is pretty clean, so that is nice. But let's take a look again at our finished pillow. So this is such a fun technique. I think you're really gonna enjoy it. And there's just so many different things you can do, and I hope that you are encouraged to make an entire quilt out of it when you're done.